Thank you. I'm sorry for the disruption.
No need to apologize. I think we are waiting for, Michelle's just joined. I think we're just waiting for Frank, but it is 12:01. So if you are ready, Madam Clerk, I am ready as well.
Very well. Good.
And KJ, we looking good from your end?
Go.
Good man. All right.
Okay.
The Boston City Council is hereby called to order for Wednesday, October 28th. Madam Clerk, would you please read the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum?
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Arroyo.
Present.
Councilor Baker. Councilor Bach.
Present.
Councilor Braden.
Present.
Councilor Campbell.
Present.
Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George.
Present.
Councilor Flaherty.
Yeah.
Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn.
Here.
Councilor Janey. Councilor Mejia.
Here.
Councilor O'Malley.
Present.
Councilor Wu.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, would you please lead us in an invocation?
Thank you. My privilege. From different neighborhoods, you have arrived this morning. You have gathered here, both women and men, as 13 individuals with 13 disparate life paths, as people from differing homes from various corners of our great city, as people holding an array of guiding life values. To prepare for the work that lies before you this day, might you begin your time together by inviting in 3 essential guides: courage, compassion, and commitment. In the name of all that is in you, that has the commitment to believe that every single effort made on behalf of whatever could be does matter. In the name of all of this and more, you come together to begin the day by bringing all the courage, compassion, and commitment that creation has given you. May your hearts and minds too be open to receiving ever more as you begin this day together. As you ready yourselves for all the work that is etched into your hearts, into the lives of your constituents, and into the written agenda that undoubtedly lies before you. In a shared moment of silence, then may we now invoke for yourself that you invite in these 3 friends: courage, compassion, and commitment. May these 3 impulses thrive within you, assisting you in continuing to build a sense of community, one with another, and one with another out there in the wider country that holds us all. May the spirit of courage, the spirit of compassion, and the spirit of commitment sustain you, your families, and your constituents through all that today and tomorrow will bring. So may it be. Shalom. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that inspiring and very hopeful message. I now invite everyone to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
to the
of the
flag
United
United States of America,
and to the
And to the
republic
republic
for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
visible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk and colleagues. Now we're on to the first order of business, which is the approval of our minutes. Seeing and hearing no discussion on the matter, Madam Clerk, would you please read the roll call so that we can approve the minutes from last meeting as presented?
Thank you. Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. And Mr. President, I will mark Counselor Baker in
Yes.
attendance.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And
You're
welcome,
welcome.
Dr. Baker.
You're welcome. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Mr. President, the minutes have been approved.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We will now move on to communications from His Honor the Mayor. Madam Clerk, please read and place before the body docket 1066.
Thank you. Docket 1066. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $397,057.92 in the form of a grant from the Assistance to Firefighters Grant COVID-19 Supplemental, awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to be administered by the Fire Department. The grant will fund the purchase of PPEs and related supplies, including reimbursements to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus.
Docket 1066 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Now, Madam Clerk, please place before the body docket 1067.
Docket 1067. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $200,001.16 in the form of a grant for the FFY19 Assistance to Firefighters Regional Grant, awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to be administered by the Fire Department. The grant will fund the growing need for the Fire Department personnel trained in tech rescue in the cities and towns, Boston, Brookline, Cambridge, Chelsea, Everett, Revere, Somerville, Quincy, and Winthrop.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice and the District Counsel for Mattapan. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. As chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, I am seeking suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1067. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We've also received this grant in the past. It comes from the federal government and it supports training for technical services and technical rescue, which involve the use, of course, of specialized tools and skill involving, for example, vehicle extraction, rope rescue, and structural collapse rescue, among other things. And it's obviously been a really challenging time for the city to get some of these grants from the federal government. So looking to suspend the rules and pass this docket today. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Sorry about that. Councilor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1067. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Docket 1067. Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Mr. President, docket 1067 has passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you now please read docket 1068 and place it before the body?
Docket 1068, message and order authorizing the city of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $75,000 in the form of a grant for the pre-disaster mitigation awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, passed through the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency to be administered by the fire department. The grant will fund the first phase of the development of a cost-effective, resilient, and environmentally viable protection strategy and mitigation plan for Moon Island and its causeway.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice and the District Counsel for Mattapan. Counselor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. As Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, I'm seeking suspension of the rules and passage of Docket 1068. It also self-explanatory and be used by our Emergency Management Agency to in the protection and mitigation efforts at Moon Island. I will also say this is also a grant that, as you can imagine, we received before, but wasn't easy to get this time around with all that's going on in the federal government. So looking to get these resources to our department right away. So again, seeking suspension of the rules and passage of Docket 1068.
The Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, Counselor Campbell, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of Docket 1068. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Mr. Vice President, docket number 1068 has passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, please read and place before the body Docket 1069.
Thank you. Docket 1069, a message and order authorizing the city of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $60,000 in the form of a grant for the community garden grant awarded by TD Bank to be administered by the mayor's office. The grant will fund the combination of artistic engagement with skill and community building events during the community grown program season, which will run during the summer months of 2021 and 2022.
Thank you, Madam President. As the Chair of the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks, I am going to move for suspension of the rules and passage of this docket. It is a relatively small docket, about $60,000. We've used this in the past. It's a wonderful partnership between the Office of New Urban Mechanics and other philanthropic endeavors, and really allows for really taking some of our community parks, our community gardens more specifically, and putting some real programming in place, having some grants for artists, installations as well as other meeting points, and it's just a wonderful grant. So given the size and the fact that we're anxious to get that money out to support our parks, particularly amid pandemic, I move and ask for suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1069. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Docket number 1069, Counselor Arroyo.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Mr. Vice President, docket number 1069 has passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on now to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, would you please read docket 1070 through 1073?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Docket number 1070, communication was received from Councilor Wu regarding a food justice agenda for Boston. Docket number 1071, notice is received from Michael Leconto of his resignation from the school committee. Docket number 1072, notice is received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinance 1979 regarding actions taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its meeting of September 30th, 2020. And docket number 1073, notice is received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinance of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its October 7th, 2020 meeting. Mr. Vice President, can't hear you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm new at Zoom, apparently.
You're doing great, not to worry.
It's now time for everyone's favorite part of a council meeting. Matters recently heard for possible actions. Madam Clerk, would you begin by please reading docket 1041?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Docket number 1041, ordinance amending City of Boston Code, ordinances 6, section 6-10, language and communication access for city services.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes Councilor Flaherty, Vice Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councilor Flaherty, you are muted, as I just was.
My apologies there, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Government Operations held a hearing yesterday on docket 1041, an ordinance amending the City of Boston Code, ordinances, Chapter 6, Section 6-10, language and communications access for city services. Councilor Mejia is the sponsor of this ordinance, and it was referred to the committee back on October the 7th, 2020. The proposal would expand upon the current ordinance that was sponsored by our colleague, City Councilor Michelle Wu, and our former colleague, City Councilor Tim McCarthy, by codifying the Office of Language and Communication Access, which will serve as the main contact for the language and communication access services in plans with city departments. The proposal would require the office to work with the community to develop guidelines that reflect culturally competent interpretation and translation in order to provide a list of standards when contracting for interpretation and translation services. The proposal changes the translation section to require the vital documents be translated into languages spoken by 5% of the population of the City of Boston or by 1,000 persons, whichever is lesser, otherwise known as the most commonly used languages. This is a change from the current ordinance, which imposes this requirement on city departments that receive federal assistance. The current ordinance requires that vital documents be translated in Spanish, Haitian, Creole, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Cape Verdean. The following individuals from the administration participated in the hearing: Jennifer Viva Wong, Interim Director, Mayor's Office of Language and Community Access; An Lei, Senior Policy Advisor, Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement; and Jessica Doonan, Chief of Staff, Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities. The committee also heard testimony in support of the docket from various organizations, including Hau Wasami, Community Advocate; Professor Miran Uriati, University of Mass Boston's Gaston Institute; Ivan Espinoza Madrigal, Executive Director, Lawyers for Civil Rights; Carolyn Chow, Director, Asian American Resource; and Nada Campusano Horton, Senior Manager of the Office of Court Interpret Services. Our panelists provided valuable insight about the proposal and really the need for high quality, culturally competent translation and interpretation services. We heard from a number of folks from the public, particularly around our Boston Public Schools, and how oftentimes they feel more confused either during or after the meeting than they were when they walked into the meeting. And that's a problem that is a solvable problem for this body, and hopefully this ordinance will address that in working with BPS and the administration. So the public comments reflected support for the proposal as well, in stressing the opportunity and importance of quality and accuracy in the translation of those services as well. So as Vice Chair of the Committee on Government Operations, I recommend the matter remain in committee for further action, most likely a working session, which is what several of my colleagues had suggested at yesterday's hearing. And through you, Mr. Chair, turn it over to the lead sponsor, Councilor Julia Mejia, for any additional remarks that she has with respect to this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Councilor Mejia, would you like to speak on this docket?
Sure. Thank you, Vice President O'Malley. Really do appreciate the opportunity to speak. And thank you to Councilor Edwards and Flaherty for their teams for working with us to ensure that the hearing went smoothly. In Councilor Edwards' absence, we are wishing her all the best during this time. The hearing was an introductory session to get people familiar with the proposed changes to the existing language access ordinance. Councilor Flaherty, who stepped up at the last minute to chair the hearing, provided a very good summary of the changes we are proposing in the hearing. We heard from Jennifer from the existing Office of Language and Communication Access, who provided an overview of what the office currently does. We also heard from Ivan Espanosa Magardi, who offered his support for the formal establishment of this office, in addition to the expanded support for people who cannot read or write. Carolyn Chow from the AARW also offered support for this initiative and gave an amazing list of recommendations of how we can make this ordinance even stronger. Nadar Compasano Horton made some amazing points about the requirements and qualifications needed to be an interpreter. One story I wish to highlight in particular was that of Hawa Warsanam. She mentioned that she got into trouble and she had to pay a fine because the document that she filled out receiving government assistance was in a language that she could not fully understand. That is what's at stake with our current language access laws. We have so much work to do to strengthen our accommodations to those who speak languages other than English. Finally, I'd like to thank Melissa from Councilor Flynn's office for offering her services as an interpreter. We are very fortunate to have a number of members of the public provide testimony in languages other than English, and we couldn't have done that without our interpreters. Moving forward, we're hoping to listen to a working session and continue the work, and definitely wanna say again how much we appreciate Councilor Flynn and his office. You guys always step up. You are what the city needs when we think about language access. You translate everything into multiple languages. You utilize your social media to keep people connected, and your staff. We really do appreciate working in partnership with you all on these issues. So thank you, Councilor Flynn, for your sponsorship and support along the way. And a big shout out to Councilor Wu for in 2016 leading the charge and getting us to this point. This is what it looks like when people step in and lean into what we all need to do to help support those who can't for themselves. So thank you to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Flynn, did you wish to speak on this? I know your hand had been raised. I don't want to put you on the spot, but. And I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor O'Malley. I just want to say thank you to Councilor Mejia, Councilor Flaherty and Edwards, and Councilor Wu has done previous work on this along with Councilor McCarthy. So just want to say great work to all of my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. So Docket 0141 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations. Madam Clerk, I do apologize. I neglected to ask you to place dockets 1070 through 1073 on file. So please do so. Thank you very much.
So done.
Thank you very much. And then Madam Clerk, also would you now read, please read docket 0979.
Docket 0979. Order for hearing regarding the implementation of the BPS Ready Reopening Plan.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the chair of the Committee on Education, Councilor Saibi George. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. We had a spirited hearing last night regarding the reopening of the Boston Public Schools. We were joined by Superintendent Caselius and many members of her administration, Jessica Tang from the Boston Teachers Union, Andre Francois from the Boston School Bus Drivers Union, nurses Lauren O'Malley Singh and Jonathan Haynes, and Camila Drummond Forrester from Open Circle at the Wellesley Centers for Women, who reminded us about why we need to focus on social emotional learning and well-being for both students and adults alike during this pandemic. I'd like to thank Councilors Flynn, Campbell, O'Malley, Mejia, and Breeden for joining us for this hearing and asking very thoughtful and conversation-provoking questions. This will certainly not be the last time we hold a hearing on the reopening specifically as we work to reopen our schools during this year. It is clear that we continue to have more work to do as a district and as a Boston Public Schools community to make our schools safe for our highest need students and our educators. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councilor Saibi George. Docket 0979 will remain in the Committee on Education. We are now moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions. Madam Clerk, would you please read and place before the body docket number 1074?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Docket 1074, Councilors Flynn and Baker offer the following order for a hearing to discuss speeding cars as a public health emergency and address infrastructure improvements.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the district councilor from South Boston. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I first want to thank Councilor Baker for his partnership on this. We are filing in this hearing to discuss speeding cars in unsafe streets as a public health emergency to raise awareness about critical issues, as well as to talk about traffic calming infrastructure needed to improve pedestrian safety. I realize I have called for a hearing every year at the Council on Pedestrian Safety and Vision Zero, and I just recently called for one again, partnering with Councilor Flaherty as well. But with recent events we've seen in South Boston and across the city, I am not going to stop talking about this issue. I think it's time we call speeding cars in unsafe roads what we all know them to be, a public health emergency. There were several car crashes in recent weeks in various parts of the city. 2 pedestrians were fatally struck by vehicles in South Boston, one at Andrew Square and another on First Street. And another pedestrian was struck by a pickup truck at the entrance of the public garden, where the truck crashed into a stone pillar. Just last week alone, there were 4 incidents where cars crashed into buildings or light poles in South Boston at the intersection of L Street and 3rd Street into a housing, displacing 17 residents, a vehicle backing up on the curb and into a business on East Broadway, at Perkins Square on West Broadway, into Magoo's Pizza, also displaying 6 residents, and on Old Colony Avenue into a light pole. Advocates and public health agencies have long viewed road safety as a public health issue, as car crashes are one of the leading causes of deaths and injuries in the nation and worldwide. In fact, World Health Organization highlighted road safety as a public health issue in 2004. New York State Department of Health identified motor vehicle traffic injuries as a major public health problem as well. In recognizing speeding cars and road safety as a public health emergency, we elevate this issue and provide the urgency to make the infrastructure improvements required to force cars to slow down and address this public health and safety issue. I continue to believe it will take a combination of infrastructure improvements to our built-out environment, lowering the speed limit to 20 miles per hour, and enforcement from Boston Police. I also know Councilor Campbell has called for a designated enforcement pod from the Boston Police as well. I also want to thank Boston Transportation Department and Boston Police Department for their continued partnership on this work, making these improvements and implementing Operation Crosswalk stings to enforce the rules of the road. As you may recall, it was Councilor Baker who previously called for a hearing on 20 miles an hour as well. I want to thank Councilor Baker. So we are filing this hearing order to further bring awareness to the dangers of speeding cars in unsafe roads, and hope that we can look at this issue from all angles and to recognize that a speeding car in roads that do not force them to slow down is both a public safety and a public health issue. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flynn. The chair now recognizes the district councillor from Dorchester. Councillor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just want to thank Council Flynn for his partnership on this here. And I look forward to the hearing, and especially the district councilors know how much this affects people's lives. Constant calls for speed bumps and traffic calming measures. Just happy to be part of this with Council Flynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. The chair now recognizes the district councillor from Brighton. Councillor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to add my name to this hearing order. In Alston, Brighton, we have had a recent mobility study in which they studied speed on some of our residential streets, and it was quite shocking to see that in some of our one-way residential streets, traffic is traveling at 35 to 45 miles an hour. And it really raised lots of questions and alarm about public safety and the ability for pedestrians and bicyclists and other road users to be safe. So I wholeheartedly support this initiative, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Braden's name. Would any further discussion on this bill? Seeing and hearing none, would any councillors wish to add their name? Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Bach, Councillor Asaibi George, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Arroyo, Councillor Wu. Please add the chair's name. Please add Councillor Mejia's name. And docket 1074 will be referred to the Committee on Public Health. Madam Clerk, please read and place before the body docket number 1075.
Docket 1075, Councillor Asaibi George offer the following order for hearing regarding the review of curriculum standards and resources in the Boston Public Schools.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the at-large councillor from Dorchester, Councillor Asaibi George. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. I filed this hearing order because it was clear to me that we need to think about our curriculum holistically and district-wide. We need high-quality schools in every neighborhood that are well-resourced to meet the needs of our complex district. Our students should not have to have wildly different experiences because our schools are lacking certain resources. Our students should have a well-rounded education at every level and at every school so that they have opportunities to explore who they are and what they can do in this world. When we think about the recent exam school debate, we must keep in mind that providing high quality education to our pre-K and elementary students will set them up for a lifetime of success, whether or not they attend one of our exam schools. Those are the critical years to developing the fundamental skills for lifelong learning. Those skills are developed not just through reading and math class, but through art and music and non-academic extracurricular activities. We also must ensure that when our students graduate high school, they have some degree of personal financial literacy, can swim, understand health and wellness needs, and are ready to be adults in the world. There is so much more work we can do to ensure that every school is equipped and ready to provide a holistic education to all of our students. I look forward to holding this hearing and to begin this work. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Asaibi George. The chair now recognizes the other at-large councillor from Dorchester, Councillor Mejia. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President O'Malley. I am looking forward to this public hearing and happy to see that we're going to be diving into education issues here in the city of Boston. Having worked in the education space as a parent for the last 4 or 5 years, this is exactly the type of leadership that we have been yearning for, and I'm happy to see that we're going to finally address some of the issues around the inequalities that have existed and persisted in the Boston Public Schools for far too long. So really looking forward to hosting this conversation and elevating the voices of the parents who have often been out of the scenes. And I'm really happy that the exam schools have given us an opportunity to have this very important conversation, and look forward to engaging and organizing and bringing parents into the fold so that we can finally have some restorative justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Am I correct in assuming that you'd like to add your name?
Yes, please add my name.
Okay. Any further discussion on docket 1075? Seeing and hearing none, would any councilors wish to add their name? Madam Clerk, please add Councilor Braden, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Bach, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Wu, Councilor Campbell. Please add the chair's name. And docket 1075 will be referred to the Committee on Education.
Mr. Chairman, I just please add my name. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Thank
I'll
you.
just move for
Councilor
reconsideration.
So
No,
moved.
it's fine. We're still doing the vote, basically.
Thank you. Please add
Thank you.
Councilor Flaherty.
My apologies.
No need to apologize. Docket 10, the previous docket will be referred to the Committee on Education. Madam Clerk, would you please place before the body docket 1076?
Thank you. Docket 1076, Councilor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the implementation of an ethnic studies curriculum in the Boston Public Schools.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the at-large council from Dorchester and chair on the Committee on Education, Councilor Anissa Asabi George. Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Mr. Vice President. I'd like to add Council President Janey as an original co-sponsor. I'd like to also thank the Boston Teachers Union Ethnic Studies Now Committee for spearheading this work for the district. Through a peer-led process, our teachers have developed a pilot ethnic studies curriculum and proposal for the district. Learning about ethnic studies is a process for the students as well as the educators and opens everyone up to the diverse and complex world around us. This curriculum requires care and expertise to be done well. The Ethnic Studies Now Committee has created a proposal for how to pilot this curriculum in BPS. The superintendent supports the effort, and as a result, the district has taken some of their recommendations into consideration. They've also identified an individual who will lead this effort from the district's perspective. We need to have a public hearing on this to better understand what is needed, to have a robust pilot program, and to determine how we as a body can support this effort. I look forward to holding this hearing with Council President Janey and learning from our Boston Public Schools community. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Asabi George. Madam Clerk, in absentia, please add Councilor Janey as an original co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the district councilor from Brighton. Councilor Braden, you have the floor. Sorry, Councilor Braden, you're muted.
Beg your pardon. Please add my name to this hearing order. I really welcome this initiative. It is through a better understanding of the wonderful tapestry of our human existence that we increase mutual understanding. We increase cultural competence in our student population and in our wider population, and we just make our communities stronger by having an understanding of our ethnicity and countries of origin and language and the wonderful diversity of our community here in Boston. So I really welcome this as an initiative as a way to advance social and racial justice in Boston. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Braden. The chair now recognizes the district council from Beacon Hill. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I just again want to thank the makers for this and say, you know, as a historian, I know how important it is for people to see themselves in history and to have the stories of, you know, their own heritage woven in as they belong, where they belong, you know, in our story of the history of Boston and beyond. And so just really want to commend the Ethnic Studies Now folks from BTU and thank Councilor Asabi George and Councilor Janey for bringing this to the council, because I think that, you know, there are questions about making sure that the implementation by the district is as robust as it can be, that there's real support for the teachers in both developing this curriculum further and implementing it in their classrooms because I think we all know that in BPS, there's a big difference between something that's happening in 1 or 2 classrooms and something that we really put on a path to be integrated throughout our schools, not inconsistent with Councillor Asabi George's last hearing order. So I really think ethnic studies needs to not be this sort of optional side thing. It needs to be an inherent part of our curriculum here in BPS. And so I think it's important that we put it on a path for that to become true. So thank you so much, and please add my name, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Buck. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Braden's name as well as Councillor Bach's name. We'll get to the others in a moment. The chair now recognizes the other at-large council from Dorchester. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Vice President O'Malley. This is really exciting. I'm so happy to see the council and the teachers and everyone all on the same page around some of the things that this is, again, another restorative justice moment for so many students who are sitting in classrooms feeling unseen and unheard for far too long. This is such an amazing opportunity for us to right the wrong. And more importantly, I always think back to one of the most vocal parents that I have seen around issues of curriculum and cultural competency or lack thereof, Taylor Andre, who I remember back in 2016, 2017, as far as I can remember, has been screaming, hooting and hollering for the need to have better representation in terms of what our kids are learning about themselves. So really happy to support, to see this happen, and looking forward to having the conversation. And thank you to the makers for bringing it to this place.
Thank you. And Councillor Mejia, would you like your name added?
Absolutely.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Julia Mejia. And the chair now recognizes the district council from Mattapan. Councillor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the makers for this important of hearing order, and of course, all of the advocates, the teachers, the students, and community members who've put in the work over the last couple of years with respect to this critical issue. And I felt the need to chime in because, I'm reading the book Cast right now by Isabel Wilkerson, which is a must read, I think, for everybody. And of course, doing more deep dive research on systemic inequities, race and racism. And it's always sort of shocking to me what you don't learn in your early years, going particularly through Boston Public Schools. Much of what I learned with respect to the history of this country around race and racism and the inferiority of Blackness came from college or even law school. And it's quite shameful that we in our public school system right here in Boston, of course, we pride ourselves on being the leader with respect to much of our educational system initiatives, but we are really missing the mark with respect to teaching history that is truthful, that is honest. And some of what we teach is just straight out lies. So I'm really excited for this hearing, and hopefully it goes beyond just what's sort of in the hearing order itself to really talk about in an honest, frank way what we teach and what we don't teach, who decides what we learn, who decides what we don't learn. I think this is a critical moment in time in which we can have that deep conversation. And I'll add, to Councillor Bach's point around making sure that this curriculum is available in every school is critically important. At Latin school, I remember when we got Facing History. I think at the time it was the only school that had Facing History while there. And what I learned about the Holocaust and what I learned about how Jews were treated and gypsies and those who I would have identified as LGBTQ were persecuted, all the things I learned in that class, I learned when I was, I think, a junior or a senior, but that information was not available at every high school in the city of Boston. And so I think it's critically important that as we make these changes and do better with respect to the stories that our folks in the city want us to be teaching, and their histories, of course, want us to be teaching, that we make sure it's available to everyone. And I'll just add also to our teachers and staff as well. It's critically important. So thank you again to the makers. Thank you for your leadership. And Mr. Vice President, please add my name.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Andrea Campbell as a co-sponsor. Seeing no further discussion on this docket, Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Arroyo, Councillor Wu. Please add the chair, all as co-sponsors to docket 1076. Madam Clerk, would you please read and place before the body docket 1077?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Docket 1077, Councilor Wu offer the following resolution, urging the Baker administration to expand access to nutrition assistance by closing the SNAP gap.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the at-large counselor from Rosendale. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a resolution that I would like to move to adopt today. It is a small action that could be taken by the state to close a huge gap in food access. This comes out of the food justice agenda that was mentioned earlier in the meeting. I filed the entire report with the council so everybody could see a long list of recommendations, but one of the items that kept coming up over and over again was that we need to streamline the process for Mass Health and applicants to also apply at the same time for SNAP. SNAP is the federal Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. It is the nation's most effective anti-hunger program, and there's a huge gap. More than 70,000 Boston residents who participate in Mass Health are likely eligible for SNAP, but do not receive SNAP benefits today. It's one of the largest municipal gaps, SNAP gaps, anywhere in the Commonwealth. And so this also has huge implications in Boston because then individuals are not receiving the supports that they qualify for and deserve, and that puts additional pressure on the city's emergency food distribution network, which has already seen an increase of 64% more people seeking food assistance during this pandemic. In 2020, the state legislature passed what is known as the IT bond bill, which authorizes the Executive Office of Health and Human Services to spend $5 million on capital costs associated with developing a system to allow applicants and recipients of Mass Health and the Medicare Savings Program to both initiate an application for federal SNAP at the time of application for medical assistance, and also authorize the Medicaid office to submit that to the Department of Transitional Assistance. So it would close that gap, and we have the authority, we have the resources set aside for that as well. This would expedite bringing substantial additional federal SNAP and child nutrition dollars to Boston, alleviating our families' financial hardships. I just want to read a quick statement that one of the core advocacy groups, Mass Senior Action Council, had asked. It's just 2 sentences. Massachusetts has the highest rate of economic insecurity for seniors living alone in the country, with 6 out of 10 seniors living alone and 4 out of 10 senior couples unable to make ends meet. We know that there are 100,000 seniors on Mass Health who are eligible but not enrolled in SNAP benefits, and likely another 120,000 who are below 200% of the federal poverty line, but again, not enrolled, which is why Mass Senior Action supports creating a streamlined application process to help close the SNAP gap and connect seniors with the life-saving resources that they need. There's been a letter that many of our state delegation has signed. This has been led by Senator Sal DiDomenico and Representative Jay Livingstone at the State House, and much of our Boston legislators are in full support. So I'm asking that the council go on record today in joining this effort as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilor Wu. The chair now recognizes the district councilor from Beacon Hill. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Councilor Wu for bringing this to the council. As she mentioned, this has been spearheaded at the state level by Senator DiDomenico and Representative Livingstone, whose districts overlap with mine. And I really commend their work getting this into the IT bond bill. And as folks may or may not know, the trouble with the bond bills is that you need to get the bond authority in, but then you still need to prevail upon the administration to actually go ahead and spend it. And so I think this advocacy is really important. We should be pouring far more resources into food support beyond the programs that are already on the table. But in the context of so much food insecurity, it's crazy that we have those 70,000 families that Councilor Wu alluded to who could be covered by this existing federal program and aren't getting their benefits. So I'm really grateful to my colleague for bringing this to the council's attention. And I think it's something that we should all be advocating to the governor and the administration to really act on swiftly, especially in these times. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. Madam Clerk, please add Councilor Kenzie Bach as a co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the district council from South Boston. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. I just want to say thank you to Councilor Wu for her strong leadership on this important issue during the census, encouraging people to complete the census. I was telling people that the most important and effective federal program is the SNAP program. I've seen it firsthand from so many in my district, the South Boston Action Center, the South Boston Health Center, among others, providing food to families and elderly in need. So I just want to highlight and say thank you to Councilor Wu, and we need to do more to make sure that any family or any person that is hungry gets nutritional food, regardless of cost. It should be free for anyone that's in need. So I want to say thank you to Councilor Wu and to my colleagues as well. Please add my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Madam Clerk, please add Councilor Ed Flynn's name. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please add Councilor Michael Flaherty's name, Councilor Nisa Saibi George's name, Councilor Julia Mejia's name, Councilor Liz Braden's name, Councilor Andrea Campbell's name, Councilor Ricardo Arroyo's name. Please add my name. And Councilor Wu seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1077. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Excuse me. Docket 1077. Councilor Arroyo.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo, yes. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Braden.
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Councilor Mejia.
Yes.
Councilor Mejia, yes. Councilor O'Malley.
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley, yes. And Councilor Wu.
Yes.
Councilor Wu, yes. Mr. Vice Chair, docket number 1077 has passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, I appreciate you most days, but none more than today. Thank you for reminding me that I neglected to assign docket 1076 to a committee, so I would now like to assign docket 1076 to the Education Committee. Thank you. We are now moving on to late files, and I am informed by our clerk that there are 2 late file matters. We will take a roll call vote to add these items into the agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Arroyo.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo, yes. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Braden.
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Councilor Mejia.
Yes.
Councilor Mejia, yes. Councilor O'Malley.
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley, yes. And Councilor Wu.
Yes.
Councilor Wu, yes. Mr. Vice President, the matters are properly before the body.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Would you please read the first late file matter into the record?
Thank you. From the office of Kim Janey, City Council President, District 7. Dear Clerk Feeney, I regret to inform you that I will be absent from our weekly council meeting on October 28th, 2020 due to illness. Councilor O'Malley will preside over today's meeting. Please read this letter into the public record. Thank you. Sincerely, Kim Janey, President of the Boston City Council.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The late file matter will be placed on file, and we, of course, all send our best wishes to the Council President for a speedy recovery. Madam Clerk, would you please now read the second late file matter into the record?
Thank you. Office of Boston City Council, Lydia Edwards, District. Dear Council President Janey and Clerk Feeney, I regret to inform you that I will be absent from our weekly council meeting on October 28th, 2020 due to bereavement. Sincerely, Councilor Lydia Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The file will be placed, that matter will be placed on file. And of course, we send our love and support to our colleague, our sister, and our friend, Councilor Lydia Edwards. We are now moving on to the green sheet section of the meeting. Would any councilor wish to remove a matter from the green sheets? He or she may do so at the time. I see Councilor Flynn. The chair now recognizes the district councilor from South Boston, Councilor Flynn. Or is that the remnants of a last raised blue hand?
Yes, it was from the last time. I'm sorry about
Okay,
that.
fair enough, fair enough. No need to apologize. Anyone else wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets? The correct answer is no. Excellent. We're now moving on to the consent agenda, and I've been informed by the clerk that there were 0 additions to the consent agenda. Congratulations. Seeing and hearing no objections, the matters, we don't have to say that because there are no matters to add to the consent agenda. So we're moving now for the adoption of the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Councilor Arroyo for the consent agenda.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo, yes. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Braden.
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Councilor Mejia.
Yes.
Councilor Mejia, yes. Councilor O'Malley.
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley, yes. And Councilor Wu.
Yes.
Councilor Wu, yes. Mr. Vice President, the consent agenda has been adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Well done, colleagues. Now we are nearly completed, but we're now going to move on to the announcement section of the meeting. Would any councilor wish to share any thoughts with all of us and those watching? And the chair now recognizes the district councilor from Beacon Hill. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say a brief word about Fran Early, who will be in our tributes at the close of the meeting. When I came back from graduate school, I went to the meeting of the GBIO, Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, at my church, thinking that I'd like to get involved in the church working on urban justice issues. And I showed up at the meeting and there were like 2 of us. And a week later, I was somehow in charge of this effort and trying to organize something that had been really robust in the past, sort of back up to strength in my home congregation. And I think, like many probably counselors here, sort of, was floundering through that, kind of pretending like I knew what I was doing. You're very lucky when in those situations, someone sort of appears who turns out to be wise and experienced and is in your corner. And in my case, I suddenly there emerged this woman, Fran Early, who had in fact helped organize the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization right at its start in '96 and at Trinity Church when it got off the ground. She was one of those amazing people who both knows how to kind of coach somebody in leading something, and also what the difference between supporting someone in learning those organizing skills is from doing it yourself. And she had done it herself, and now she was supporting people like me. And as I kept doing interfaith organizing work around the city, focusing more and more on affordable housing, I found stories again and again of people for whom Fran Early had been that person. They had started an organizing task, especially in the interfaith world, that they didn't really know how to wrap their hands around. And she had become an advisor, a supporter, somebody who was always brutally honest, but in the kindest way, never sugarcoated when you had tried to organize something and it hadn't gotten off the ground, but was amazing at helping you think through how to strategize. And she was really a force. And she's one of those people that I don't think she's famous in the city, but her fingerprints are on all kinds of victories for justice, including the statewide Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which was really one of the first wins of GBIO under her leadership 20 years ago. So she passed away very suddenly this weekend and is being mourned in faith communities across the city. And as a friend of mine said yesterday, if it were not these times, we would fill Trinity Church to the rafters before her. So I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Fran Early. She was always wearing this great red vest, so that's why I'm wearing a red sweater today. And just say that the city and a very broad community mourns her passing. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair now recognizes the at-large council from Dorchester. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice President O'Malley. It's been quite exciting to see you in your chairmanship here today. All the formalities between you and the clerk have just been incredibly educational. But that's not what I'm here to talk about, but it's been great. I just wanted to bring into the space, last night I met with the South Bend and Roxbury Partnership group. They've been doing a lot of organizing around some of the issues that are happening on Mass and Cass. And I just wanted to uplift the fact that, you know, I'm an at-large counselor. I'm responsible for 22 neighborhoods. So for me, I've been really intentional about making sure that I stay in my lane and figuring out what voice and role I play in any of the spaces that I get invited to. And I just see that issue is so volatile. And I just want to give a quick shout out to all of the council colleagues who have already been in front of this group. But I also would like to extend an invitation to other council colleagues who may not live in or have any quote unquote business in the area to really lean into this as a citywide issue that I think we can all wrap our hands around. I feel like folks are feeling that it would just be an opportunity for us as a city to figure out. I know some of the things that are happening in other Rosendale, Jamaica Plain, East Boston, West Roxbury, all of these things may not be in the immediate backyard, but it's still impacting the citywide quality of life. So I'm hoping that if there was an opportunity for all of us to convene in a public forum, that we could do so as a collective body. I know it's controversial, I know it's crazy, but I just think that these times present themselves as opportunities for us to work more collaboratively around some of the things that people across the city are experiencing, and hoping for your response and a favorable response to an invitation to lean in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Any other councilors wishing to offer announcement or remarks? Well, I will take my prerogative as the chair then to simply say 1 week from today, the next time that we meet in formal session will be the day after the 2020 presidential election. And while it would be inappropriate for me to pontificate how I'd like to see that election unfold from this position, I think it's fair to say that it is very overcast, rainy, and cold right now, and I believe most, if not all of you, are looking for blue skies to come soon. And suffice it to say, it is vitally important that we do everything we can to encourage the highest possible turnout among all Bostonians. We've been working very, very hard in this space to making it easier for individuals to vote, not only on election day, but with some great successful early vote locations, with a vote by mail initiative that we worked very, very hard to bring to fruition. I would urge those who are watching who wish to vote by mail, you may be better off submitting it to an early vote site where there will be a secure box, or at one of our secure boxes around the city, if you are unable or would prefer not to vote in person on Tuesday. But certainly we've seen some really encouraging, robust turnout across the Commonwealth and across the country. I think it speaks to the change and the hopefulness that I believe this country wants and deserves, and look forward to seeing every Bostonian avail him or herself of that opportunity to be citizen legislators and doing their most precious civic duty, which is voting next Tuesday, or at one of the opportunities leading up to next Tuesday. So we now are closing the council meeting. As we always do, we will be adjourning in memory of some really notable Bostonians. For Councilor Bach, we will be adjourning in honor of Fran Early. For the council president, in absentia, Councilor Kim Janey, we will be adjourning in honor of Raymond Joyner and Daniel Rice. And I am honored on behalf of all of you and our other councilors who aren't with us in person to also adjourn this meeting in honor of Walter Wallace Jr. and Gregory Vincent Bertolino, who is the partner of our dear colleague and friend, Councilor Lydia Edwards. As Shakespeare said, everyone can master a grief, but he who has it. Our colleague is going through some incredibly difficult times right now. I know we all send our love and support and prayers and strong wishes to her So as we close in honor of those individuals, please keep special attention for all of those watching who, for our colleague and for so many people who've been touched by some really difficult times that's only compounded by the fact that we are dealing with this pandemic. So thank you. I'd now ask you all to join me for a moment of silence. Chair now moves that when the council adjourns today, it did so in the aforementioned individuals, and we are scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, November 4th at 12 noon. For the safety of the general public and all involved, this meeting will be held virtually and posted online. Viewers can watch the council meeting live on YouTube by visiting boston.gov/city-council-TV. The council is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank
Well
you.
done. Well done, Matt.
Gold star.
Thanks, everybody.
Great
You're a
job, Matt.
natural.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.